All right, can everybody hear me okay? Good. So, yeah, welcome. I'm John Powderly. I'm an oncologist in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I'm happy to present to you our use case about openEHR. The reason I'm here is because they wanted to give a good use case application of how we got involved and what our purpose is. We kind of have a novel use case around cancer research trials, embedding them into openEHR, and actually doing personalized medicines that are manufactured at the point of care. So I'm happy to tell you the problem. The problem is cancer is on the rise, and there's 19 million new cases each year now, but when we project out to 2050, there will be an increase of 77% incidence up to 35 million, but when you look at the prevalence, which is those that are ambulating and walking, living with cancer, by 2050, it'll be 105 million. So part of that is the silver tsunami of all the aged population, and then the recent COVID pandemic, almost everybody missed their mammogram, prostate exams, colonoscopies, so we're seeing a massive stage migration to more advanced cancers. So when I started my clinic in 2005, I took a good landscape view of how broken the research trial industry was. And this was my slide. This was why I started our research clinic, to really dedicate to metastatic cancer patients getting access to trials. And in the early 2000s, the big thing was outsource everything. All the companies outsourced, including biopharma. They outsourced running the trial to site management organizations, contract research organizations, and then the doctors practiced in their clinic on paper EMRs, paper records. I started with that, and then the case report forms for trial data was also paper-based. I lived through those days. That's when the sponsors, in the 1990s, the sponsors ran the studies with paper, and we met the sponsors. They came to the site. But when everything was outsourced, it got separated in data silos. So unfortunately, this was the status of disintegration in 2005, including the tumor. The tumor would be resected by the surgeon. It would go on a slide, paraffin wax, or in formaldehyde in a bucket. No cells were grown and no immune cells were grown, so it was a total loss of the potential of the immune system and the functionality of the tumor. So matters get worse. When you look at how much money is wasted per day on the broken industry of cancer research trials, this is a summary. We'll go through the math very quickly, but when you look at the total US healthcare dollar and how much the industry spends on research and development, and break it down by the very few number of patients that participate in trial, the very few principal investigators that actually do trials, and then you look at how slow the accruals are, because there's very few research sites, it is true that we lose or waste $1 million of industry monies per day for each blockbuster drug. So each day's delay is $1 million lost. No wonder drugs are so expensive. And to drive that point home, here's an example of how much cancer drugs cost through R&D. So when you look at a precision drug or a biomarker-driven cancer drug, it costs $2.6 billion. A little less expensive because it dries it faster because you've got a drug target and you can measure it. If it's a non-precision cancer drug, $3.5 billion. And this scale even shows some of these drugs cost $13 to $15 billion to do the R&D, including the trial. So very expensive, lots of monies are wasted due to inefficiencies. And guess what? There's no shortage of cancer drugs. The pipeline is hot. There's never been more hope and promise in cancer research than now. Look at just 9,000 cancer drugs in development, from mouse models all the way through phase 1, and all of these drugs have to go through phase 1, so our clinic focuses on phase 1. So we are very busy with a pipeline of great sponsors, great industry, but still there's broken layers of data silos and disintegration. When we zoom in on cell and gene therapies, which is my special interest, cellular immunotherapy, there's more than 2,000 cell and gene therapies in development. How are all these new drugs, all these new cell therapies going to make it to patients on regulated clinical trials, right, at a clinical site when it's so disintegrated? So When I started the clinic, we looked at this with a new set of lens, new clinic, new clean white piece of paper, clean slate. We said we can do a paradigm shift, which is doing the historical process makes a product for one size fits all as part of the biopharma industry. Maybe with modern personalized medicine, we can look at this as, oh, of course it's a process to make a product, but it's a product for each patient because it's personalized. And can that be done instead of as an expensive one-size-fits-all drug product, can that be done as a professional service at the point of care? And we call that a human applications lab. And so just to make you a true believer, you got to see to believe, this is just a handful of the devices that are now on file with the FDA being used in clinical trials to manufacture personalized medicines. There's about 24 of these devices. These are just some of the ones that we have done due diligence on, or some of them we have. They can manufacture personalized oligosense nucleotides, right, to silence genes. They can actually manufacture personalized peptides as nanobodies or peptide inhibitors. And we can sort cells on a magnet, we can grow them, we can expand them to hundreds and even thousands of fold increase. So the future is here, but how do we frame that so we can deliver the promise of modern science to patients when the system is so broken? So this is what our ideas were. Okay, we do a lot of biopharma industry-sponsored trials, wonderful, great, the pipeline's hot. They are very keen on getting their IP protected, the trial data, the product, the accrual speed, and the quality. And so we do that very well at our independent research site. But really what the patient needs and where the future is going is personalized medicine. Personalized medicine is sometimes not attractive to a big pharma, right? Because it's too risky, it's too futuristic. It's a hard business sustainable model to wrap your head around. So we're looking at it like, well, maybe one day if the costs get low enough where we could manufacture personalized medicines at the point of care with some of those tabletop devices, maybe then we could increase access and affordability, quality of life and cure. Patients can have custody of their own immune cells and their own tumor in a functional, growing, living biobank. Patients would be empowered and they would have continuity. So what we needed was a way we could get the database and put this digital solution together. You'll start to see how openEHR comes into this story. So here's an example of what we do at our clinic now. Carolina BioOncology is a phase 1 research clinic. We're on the map. We've done 180 phase 1 studies, 12 of the FDA commercially approved drugs on TV. We've helped to get the early first-in-human studies. So we have a good reputation in the industry for doing great clinical research. Cancer patients come from all up and down the East Coast. But we also have a research lab that has become a GMP manufacturing facility to grow cells, all to FDA specifications and regulations. So we call this our tech stack, right? It's a tech stack in the sense that you guys have your digital stack. We have a tech stack where we can do translational research at the point of care. We can do good manufacturing at the point of care. We can also have a living biobank, so we can grow immune cells and tumor cells and set up a battlefield. Which immune cells do the best killing? Oh, pick those ones. We'll grow them up. We'll give them back to patients. We also can do leukapheresis. We're FDA registered, and we have AABB blood bank accreditation for GMP-grade leukapheresis. We also are a phase 1 clinic, as mentioned, so we have a high-complexity CLIA lab. We have pharmacy clean rooms, so we can mix and aliquot different dose levels of study drugs. And BioCytics even has their own simple cell therapy pipeline, which we have different ideas how to grow cells and want to contribute to the delivery of those. Now, the challenge is, and what I'm here for, is to talk about how do we build our digital infrastructure. So in the digital infrastructure has to be able to integrate all those disparate data silos, which we've been doing for 20 years. How can we modernize that with one single, e-source of truth? And so we call that conceptual idea our BioDice, which is BioCytics Digitally Integrated Clinical Enterprise, and it has to be built upon some of the new evolving standards around AI, or in laboratory and manufacturing speak, good machine learning practices, right? So we're the only independent facility like this in the US, full stack vertically integrated, and this is happening across the globe. the United Kingdom just a couple months ago passed regulations about modular manufacturing for point of care. And the US federal government recently published a white paper, discussion paper, about understanding how can this be done. They didn't give any serious guidance yet, but they're studying this. So patients are demanding it. The industry is developing it. The devices are real. So we as a community, including openEHR, have to figure out how are we going to bring this to patients. So this is my slide from 2005. Okay, we've got gene sequencing, proteomics, metabolomics, cellomics, cell-to-cell, hand-to-hand combat of killing cells, immune phenotyping, and clinical data, which is the highest complexity, right? And how are we going to put that into a unified model so we could do what back then used to be known as hierarchical clustering analysis, neural networks. Now we know that as modern AI. And how can we use that data to manufacture individual oligonucleotides to silence genes or peptides to inhibit certain pathways or make cells? So I started this journey in the beginning by doing what other private practice oncologists did in America. We bought the best of breed software. All right. And then we realized about 10 years later, the integration was impossible. Impossible. They promised big integrations, but it was so expensive to have these interfaces between the pharmacy and the lab and the printer even, or even the practice management system, the billing codes, we ended up having about 12 different data layers, and it was a beast. So in which said, what are the core ones that we need to do really good point-of-care manufacturing in a regulated environment for trials? And we picked out these core pieces, as you see here. But this is how we felt. I like this slide because we felt like we created a monster in the beginning with all these best of breeds, and we were stuck. And there weren't enough conduits and interfaces. The data from each data silo was unstructured. They always used different lexicons. And a lot of physicians just gave up. Then they went crawling to join hospital systems, which is great if you want to do that, but I'm independent flair. Physicians value their autonomy. We wanted to bring this new model to patients, so we stuck with it and decided, how are we going to get the disparate data silos into a unified single e-source of truth? And so that's the journey I'm telling you about now. As we thought about this, we said, okay, automatically there's some challenges because a few of these data elements are highly regulated by the FDA, specifically LIMS and manufacturing, right? And EDCs, right? That's the trail of the data. Very, very highly regulated. So it's not just like an EMR where, just Medicare regulates it, but these are highly, highly regulated pieces of software. So we stepped back, and I'm not a coder, but I can conceptualize Venn diagrams. So we started thinking, how do we take those data elements and how do they relate with Venn diagrams? Kind of simple, but I put a lot of thought into this, and it made sense, The EMR has the PHI, right? Demographics, contacts, physician lists of patients. The really depth of the PHI, patient or personal health information, gets a little bit deeper. It gets closer to the EDC, but it gets scrubbed away from the EDC when you need to really focus on the side effects, the toxicities, the grading of side effects. And our language every day, 90% of my job is the NCI, National Cancer Institute, common terminology, criteria for adverse events. You guys will hear that a lot if you're in the research world. Pharmacy and concurrent meds. And we always thought if we build the right system, we could embed clinical trials directly into the EMR so that we could make it easier to capture data and just enter it once. Still today, when we do all these industry studies, we have 8 coordinators, and they all are typing in the data in different EDC systems, whereas the doctors are typing in the data in the EMR. It's the same data. It just gets typed twice, even today. And most of you all will validate that. So we have to build a better system. There have been good attempts, lofty attempts by Vulcan Fire. We'll talk about that. But it's still, a lot is missing. So on the clinical trial management side, the CTMS, those things are really also very important. IRB, reg binders, budgets, invoicing, reconciliation. That's how our business model is doing good industry research, not billing Medicare. And how can some of those trial data help us choosing the right trials, sorting patients into the right trials through adaptive designs. And then on the manufacturing side and the lab side, we had data elements around the CLIA lab, leukapheresis, circulating tumor cell phenotyping in real time, genotyping, a living biobank with all the biopsies we do, biomarker correlates, and also try to get these algorithms of how to grow cells that are the right cells at the right time, and then all the manufacturing inventory, CMC is chemistry manufacturing controls, and batch records, autologous batch records for individualized, personalized medicine. So all of these were challenges that we had. So trying to think this through, after we understood the data elements, and we then looked at what are the processes and how do the processes interrelate. So this is, I would say 95% of my day job is looking at CTC AE tables, grading side effects according to the NCI common terminology criteria of adverse events. Our coordinators, all they do is follow the schedule of events exactly. So we have to, that is our day-to-day. So our major focus of anything we build digitally has to focus on those two core elements. So then we also have to keep in mind that there's a lot of regulatory reporting. Like if you get a bad side effect, not just a common side effect, oh, mild rash, mild diarrhea, but if you get a really bad side effect, that then goes up to the FDA through a very special mandated report called a 5500 Safety Watch or MedWatch letter. So we have to have the ability to do that, right, which that's an FDA regulation, different, very granular dictionary for that. And then the EDC has to be able to also show trends and accumulations of side effects and who's responding and a lot of these different analytical presentations. Whoops. And then on the manufacturing side, to do the GMP manufacturing, we have to understand the data elements around the reagents and the cell manufacturing steps. So a lot of challenges. And so our use case for this really needs the standards bodies that do regulatory clinical trials. So now enter ICH, right? And ICH actually owns MEDRA, which is the Medical Dictionary of Regulatory Activities, which really matters if you have a bad side effect, like a serious adverse event. That's a MEDRA dictionary because you can't just say, oh, mild diarrhea. You have to say, oh my gosh, this was a severe colitis. We need to finely grade it even more and more with a big narrative that goes in the MEDRA, these MedWatch forms. And then CDISC is really for the common data structure of trials. Wonderful, important standards data bodies, but these data bodies right now, at present, are not natively in openEHR, right? So you see where the use case here, where I'm going with this is that's what we need to do. And so initially when I thought I was gonna build this digital solution, I watched YouTubes, I read everything I can. America had declared fire is the standard, everybody's on fire. I said, I'll just build this on fire. And so I started taking boot camps from Siddharth about fire. And I learned, hey, wait a second, there's this other thing in Europe called openEHR, which, oh my gosh, you can have theoretically unlimited archetypes. And my brain blew up. I'm like, oh my gosh, every data element I need, I could natively embed that into archetypes. That's wonderful. So I felt like this was the perfect model just when I first heard about it for us to enable digital protocol, trial embedding, and the cell manufacturing as digital objects, archetypes, and templates to make a composition. And so I took a deep dive. Right? And so for those that watch this on YouTube or see about this, these are the best two books to read to really scratch the surface and take a deep dive on openEHR, how it started, what it was about. So I got copies of this for my CIO and for some of the staff. I was like, well, this is what we need to do. We're changing directions. 5 years ago, we're moving into everything openEHR. So as I learned about the reference model from a lot of the YouTube videos and some of the names that are even here today and understood it, I thought, oh my gosh, this Lego block example is how I can build a digital protocol right in openEHR. That's so simple to me, and I thought that this is the perfect use case. And then as I read more, I said, this is true. openEHR, the specifications, they've got LOINC, they've got ICD, they've got Snowbed, but they're missing those key regulatory dictionaries and data standards in openEHR. And then as the more I read, I thought, oh, this is great. We can even use different languages. We're kind of a Azure, Microsoft specialized clinic, a lot of Microsoft certifications. So we thought maybe C# and doing this in future .NET would be good for our use case. So we can build an ERP around this or build it on Microsoft AI in the future. And then I even thought, golly, with this model as a research site, if we're a hub, we can then extend it to satellite clinics, because the openEHR specifications have a lot of that core capabilities already built in, including the audit trails that the FDA would expect, the logs, the change management, all those things that we can do are kind of already built into that. We can tweak that for our research use. So what did we do? We invited Siddharth, come to Huntersville. And we sat down with our CIO and we talked about this, and I told Siddharth, hey, I will teach you all about clinical research trials and our point-of-care manufacturing if you can teach me about openEHR and how we can build a digital model. So that began the journey of how we put openEHR in the middle of our Venn diagrams, and where we would use those other common denominators, if you will, of SNOMED, LOINC, ICD, and OMOP, and then in red there are the missing data elements, right? So we need to get the ICH M11 C# protocol, which I'll tell you about in a minute, and CDISC and MEDRA data elements natively into openEHR to make this work. So a little bit about CDISC and MEDRA, and these slides will be available, but this is for home reading and screenshotting. But basically, CDISC, Clinical Data Interchange Standards Consortium, it really is about the structure for the common tools to build protocol data, right, in case report forms. And it is a unified study definitions model, which is how they collect the data to make it tabulated so it can be reported and analyzed through ADAM to be submitted for FDA regulatory authorities. MEDRA, on the other hand, is really about for the pure regulatory agencies' strictest, highest level control of bad outcomes, bad side effects, get the word out when there's a serious adverse event or a serious adverse unexpected reaction. And also when you want to bring trials finally to the regulatory agencies of each country. And then pharmacovigilance, which is important for that continuity of care. Pharmacovigilance is after a study drug gets approved commercially, we still are required to report late toxicities so that if people go blind in other countries from an FDA-approved drug, we know about it across the whole globe. So MEDRA is really important for that. So these are two really important data standards that we need to get. Another data standard, which is the ICH M11. M is multidisciplinary, and Clinical Electronic Structured Harmonized Protocol, or the acronym C#. I think they're trying to hint about something C#. Maybe that's a coding language that they prefer because it's an ISO standard. But there is now, as a couple years ago, guidance of the technical specifications of how to embed trials digitally to capture this in EMRs. And the first good use case was on FHIR, resources and FHIR profiles. They've embedded this called Vulcan FHIR. And over on the right, you can see the use case I'm advocating for is embed the ICH M11 C# study protocol directly into openEHR, so that as data is captured, I don't need to have two coordinators and two providers, 4 people type in the same thing. It's all typed once. Those data fields are already native in openEHR because I built the template, and then those will populate the CDISC, SDTM, and ADAM files, and even populate the MEDRA, MedWatch, serious adverse event files. And then that would be the most efficient way to bring down costs for clinical trial and drug development. So I got involved by going to the openEHR Converge Collide meeting. I saw, oh my gosh, this is massive amount of clinicians that are modeling. So I thought even me as a non-coding person, I could clinically model protocols. I could do this, and I got good support from the openEHR community, which I want to thank you. And I thought I would also explain the model we're developing in some simple terms that you all might understand, which is that great article that the openEHR and the FHIR leadership and the OMOP Odyssey leadership wrote last year. This was great. This kind of explains how those data standards interact. And so, and I get that. But what the point I want to make here is HL7 FHIR is wonderful. It's an absolute needed thing. And now the US government is requiring it for prior authorizations for insurance companies, patient access portals, provider directories, payer-to-payer data exchanges. It still depends on other EMR's proprietary databases. So that raises a big, it's still a challenge. It's wonderfully led by health informatics technologists, but over on the openEHR side, it's really primary use for clinicians and patients and for persistence, continuity of care, single data repository. To me, that's the single e-source of truth that I'm looking for. Enables a single patient record, and we know cancer patients especially want to own their data so they can bring it to other doctors for second and third opinions or bring it to the future of personalized medicines, co-led by physicians. And a lot of the Odyssey OMAP use cases, important, wonderful, very important, but they are retrospective. For comparator synthetic arms, they're retrospective for public health, real-world evidence. Yeah, FHIR can piggyback on them and do embedding trials, Vulcan FHIR, but it's still not real time. So for us to do personalized medicine and manufacture genes and peptides and cells down the hallway at the point of care, I need real time, and I need single source. So I love this blog I saw. This just brings it home, that on the right, if we think about the way FHIR works in the current broken system, including the clinical trial industry system, too many different data silos, if K is the number of interfaces, but if we could have one agreed upon data silo to embed trials as a single e-source of truth, we'll be golden, right? We can really overcome some of these inefficiencies. So the Vulcan FHIR efforts is multi-stakeholder, it's an approach to digital protocols, wonderful, good stepping stone. Proprietary EMRs are using it, fantastic, very important. The common denominator is SNOMED, but when we look at the actual dictionary around MEDRA, it's been described as non-standard because it's built upon extensions, and it's incomplete because it's not a one-to-one mapping, so it's very lossy. So the Vulcan FHIR solution does not solve for the single e-source of truth that we need for personalized medicine at the point of care. So when we think about, well, wait, can we flip that coin? Can we say, in the openEHR environment, can we put the ICH M11 C# digital protocol natively into openEHR archetypes, along with the CDISC and MEDRA dictionaries and data elements? Then we win. We all win. Because the benefits now, we have a single e-source of truth for unified EMR and EDCs to harmonize with longitudinal persistence. And with longitudinal persistence, now you can bring in pharmacovigilance, which is beyond the trial. And for us, the docs can do low coding in openEHR, and we can do this ourselves. We don't have to depend upon high-level, expensive coders. And so this, to us, is the perfect use case for our solution. And so for the case of personalized medicines, this matters. We can't separate secondary use, primary use, and say, oh, dear patient, we're going to manufacture N of 1 personalized medicines for you, because they have to be real time. They have to harmonize in real time. So we can bridge between personalized trials and iterative batches to make cells better, or the gene silencing oligosense nucleotides better, or shifting antigens in a tumor. As they shift in real time, we can get readouts on that. And then that has to be built upon a reliable data source of which AI can learn from. But if you got 10 different data silos in a broken system, AI is not going to tell you very much. AI can hallucinate and make up stuff to fill in the gaps. And we know this. It's already happening in hospital systems. So it has to really rely upon that core source. So I love the slogan for openEHR, data is for life. We say autologous cells are for life. Should be patients and physicians should have sovereignty, mutuality for custody of their data, the cells, the genes, and the personalized medicine feedback algorithms, which are really the patient's mutations. It's the patient's mutations, right? It's their N of 1. Patients one day will be able to afford it. So going back to 2005 when I founded the clinic, one example of how this matters is when biomarker-driven trials came out, you could have a very large randomized study that at the end of the study you'd say, oh, everybody, both arms had 50% survival, and you would never know there were clues hiding in those patients. But when you look at genomic correlates, even in 2005, a 1 or 2 year retrospective look was pretty rapid. And you could look and say, oh my goodness, I just realized that drug A cures people that have tumor gene A. Therefore, these are not just 50% that neither drug works, these are 100% that the drug that hits target works very well. So that's why these biomarkers are massively important. So the biomarkers done at the lab have to be in the unified solution so we can have what's called GMLP feedback algorithms or the Bayesian adaptive trials, so that literally if you're designing a drug A to hit target A, you might realize, oh, not only does it hit target A, but it overlaps a little bit with target D and target H. And that machine learning can feed back to improve your manufacturing in the manufacturing suite. So the lab and the manufacturing and the clinical data all have to talk to each other in real time for this to happen. And there's no way the current broken system is going to do that. So this drives home with our use case because we don't really manufacture peptides or oligos, but we do manufacture a lot of immune cells. And we're upscaling this and we're doing this. This is our pipeline. And all these different immune cells kill by different mechanisms, different way tumors hide. So we need to know in real time who's progressing, what are their biomarkers, what are the shifting antigens, so we can build upon this. So here's our solution we're proposing as kind of a community is to ingest the fire data from the hospital across the street. That's our wonderful Novant hospital across the street. Ingest that demographics and ingest their past medical history. But then within our independent clinic, we will be using openEHR to build CDISC, ICH, C#, MEDRA, capabilities, and then the apps that sit on top of that will be a functional EMR that talks to manufacturing and laboratory, that talks to a clinical trial management system, and electronic data capture. And then QMS, which the regulatory agencies are all about QMS. They'll all be integrated and then all be built in an ERP for managing patients, well, managing staff, training, qualifications, payroll, practice management, those sorts of things. So that's where we think the digital platforms of the future will be. And just to show you how far we've come in just the past really 6 months with Siddharth, thank you. Siddharth is, we internally hired some additional staff. Jonas is here, helped us do process mapping according to the official BPMN standards, which was new to us at our clinic. And then we had our interviews with our departments and looked at all the forms and the data fields, how they relate. And we had 100 user stories for the MedBlocks team. And we made wireframes and started to develop this. And basically, I told you earlier that we now can enter CTC AE within our EMR. So I just want to show you that as a demonstration. I think we're doing okay here on time, just to do a very quick demo of what this looks like so we can show you how far we've come. So here's our login to our BioDice at BioCytics.com, Dr. JP, logging in, and here is our welcome page. These are synthetic names, but a lot of the cancer history is real to date, so you can see how we would organize our notes. So let's say I can see who's in the waiting room, who's waiting for me, and let's say I want to go into Harry Potter, 43-year-old male, young patient, prostate cancer, which happens in younger patients, especially African-American patients. Stage 4, that's his TNM staging, high Gleason score, and I can look at his recent blood pressures, his weight that he's gaining, recent labs. Then I can scroll down here and get a kind of summary overview of medicine list and his recent adverse events or signs and symptoms, so we can track that. But let's say now I go into my note for today and I want to look at his more detailed past medical history. I can see the history in order of when he presented, things that matter to an oncologist, their first staging, their scans, their regimens, 3rd regimen, 4th regimen, what did their blood test results show that matter for staging, who's their referring doc, when did they change docs. And then down here at the bottom, we look at, hey, once they go on a trial, we look at trials as cycles and days, which is very important to embed that into our EMR, including the findings of their scans, the RECIST measurements, and scrolling all the way through. And then for us, the best thing is I can look at the adverse events, which is what goes in the EDC. We can say, oh, show all. I can show the adverse events that had resolved, right? And then I can say, oh, well, today I want to create a new adverse event. I want to go down here and say, okay, dear patient, what happened last night? Oh, you walked into the clinic kind of dizzy. I'm going to say, we'll type in here hypotension. And it will look up all the CTC adverse events, hypothermia, we're going to choose hypotension. We can say, oh, this is moderate, you're dizzy, we're going to give you some fluids in the clinic, and we can grade this as IP related, moderate grade, and we can say in the clinic it started today because he walked in the door, and then it also ended today because we gave him fluids and his blood pressure normalized. So that normal adverse event is now populated in our point of care progress note, EMR, which goes directly into an EDC to populate CDISC data. So to us, this is a dream. So we have many more versions and prototyping to go through, but this is amazing in 6 months that we could do this as basically a small clinic. We have 60 employees, and our core use is research. So this is a huge, huge victory for us. And now I'll switch back to the rest of my slides here, presenter view, just to, let me see here, fast forward real quick, all the slides, my last couple of slides. So basically, now that we've done that, I want to put out a good thank you to the team that has helped us do this, which is our advisory board listed here, Sodaris MedBlock team in Porna, and a lot of the openEHR leadership that have contributed their ideas and helped us and will continue to help us. So I just want to say that I've also been involved in the openEHR affiliate board at the international level, and we founded an openEHR affiliate for the United States, and we also founded the openEHR affiliate for global life sciences, which I should think take this mission forward about embedding those regulatory data standards for trials right into openEHR. So I'll be at the affiliate board booth right out here if anyone wants to talk about that. And thank you to the openEHR community for letting me get involved and teaching me. And this is a call to action for us to do this in openEHR. And I've even had some socialization about these ideas from the Vulcan Fire group that they're willing to help us with what they've already learned. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, John, for a great kickoff of the practical application sessions.